Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP, Ukraine War Frontline update for the 23rd of February 2024. This is going to be a particularly quick one today because I have like a 50-minute geopolitical video of the news, my fourth news one of the day, or third, or whatever it is, third news one of the day. Sorry, but it was had to be split because it's a real big one. It's a bumper news package. There's a lot of analysis in there of, for example, what's going on in Africa with the Russians in Africa. Some looking at some of the European polling. There's just so much going on at the moment. So let's get straight to this. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, check out my previous videos. I haven't got the key at the moment ready, so I'm just going to go straight into it. There is stasis on the northeastern sector from Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea. That's good news. No changes to mapping. Thanks, JR, who's done the mapping legend. And then we get down to Bakhmut. So past the Seversk front line, we're going to just nip into Bakhmut, see that there are some changes there in and around the Ivaniivka area. This is a real challenge as the Russians are pushing onto the borders of Ivaniivka. You've got Andriy Perpetua agreeing with that right onto the edges of that town. It looks like there's grey zone in Ivaniivka itself, and that is a real issue because you've got just next door Chaziv Yar, and so yeah, big issue there. I'm going to just show the roads a bit more clearly. That road that comes through Ivaniivka then goes down to Stepuchki, south of Chaziv Yar. You've also got some slight gains around Bodanivka as well, just to the south of Bodanivka, as according to Andriy Perpetua, with evidence that the Russians have control over that. That might be railway coming in there along that railway line, just a little bit. But yeah, challenges there to the Ukrainians in Chaziv Yar. Here we have no reports saying new Russian advances east and north of Ivaniivka. Some of these advances are not new, while the area north of Ivaniivka has recently been occupied. Preliminary info came out that Russian troops have entered the first streets of Ivaniivka. It does need confirmation though. That is, yeah, as I say, a bit of a worry. Syriac maps here. Pro-Russian mappers saying the Russian army consolidated the control over the first houses of Ivaniivka after the capture of the trenches on the eastern outskirts. So yeah, we'll move now to the south and we'll come all the way to Avdiivka, where there's been so much activity. You can see that Russians will still be sort of clearing out Avdiivka, doing a lot of work in making sure it's safe for their troops there, making sure there are no booby traps and whatnot. I don't know that the Ukrainians have much time to do anything particularly with Avdiivka. It looked like a fairly hasty retreat. Up in the north, we have some areas by Stepova. Looks like the Russians are now gaining Stepova, which was previously fully sort of grey zone. That's according to Syriac maps. Movement along the tree lines, both north and south, and then within Stepova itself. And then we have north of Lastoch Kerner, where it seems that the Russians have been halted to some degree, but north from the coke plants and along this road, the Russians are advancing. This is agreed upon, at least to some degree, by all mappers here. You have Deep State map, Syriac maps, and a little bit from Andriy Perpetua's mapping, some gains for the Russians there. And then again to the south, well, not again, but to the south of Lastoch Kerner, towards Tonyenki. Again, all mappers agreeing that there is at least some gains for the Russians in that direction. This is definitely a challenge for the Ukrainians there. As, not on this one, as Syriac maps shows here, it's this two-pronged approach towards Tonyenki and these villages, you know, Berdichi down to Tonyenki, and you got Severny as well, where it looks like, you know, the Russians want this crescent of villages where the Ukrainians appear to be holed up at the moment. There's in the last hours, says Syriac maps, increased Russian army activity as they are on offensive operations in this area of the front, advancing some 100 meters west of the coke plant. Towards Orlivka. In addition, troops began advancing west of Khmyk settlement and northwest of Opitny, taking control over most of the forest belt in the area and entered into the first parts of Severny as the Ukrainian army began their withdrawal towards a new defensive line. And this is a real shame to see if this is the case. the Russians taking these positions that have been so hard fought over for so many months. And this is this flat area that the Russians really struggled to advance north of because the Ukrainians had such good visuals of them, and it was kind of open season on any convoys that moved north there. They were hammered by the Ukrainians, and now it just seems to be that the Russians are able to advance so much more easily. But that's the nature of the beast, and this is a swing of momentum towards the Russians. You hope that the Ukrainians just have really good defenses built back here that allow them to keep solid control and a solid line. But then there have been these questions about whether the Ukrainians really have built their fortifications effectively enough. Then when we come further to the south, we're going to come down past Krasnohorivka to Maranika. No report says Russian channels claim that attacks on Ukrainian-held Krasnohorivka have started and that Russian units managed to advance into the settlement. So far, these reports are as yet unconfirmed. That is a massive worry here. So we have Maranika there. We have Krasnohorivka up here. There's this, if you remember, mine here that the Russians took control over, then the Ukrainians took about, then Russians took it, and so on and so forth. Claims that the Russians are in Krasnohorivka would be really worrying. They're more likely to be in this area up there. I think, again, this is kind of flat ground that's going to be quite difficult for the Russians to advance on. They would lose a lot of troops in so doing, but it could be either place, really. That's another worrying sign if the Russians are able to make those advances. As we can see here from deep state maps, a bit of realignment, a bit of rejigging, possibly, unless the Ukrainians have pushed the Russians back in Pobjeda. I don't know if that's the case. There was talk about them withdrawing from there. You would expect then the Russians to have robust control over Pobjeda if that's the case, but deep state maps has at least rolled back or showing some Ukrainian advances in the middle of Pobjeda there. So yeah, just making sure I've been pronouncing that correctly. Let's see, name of the place. It doesn't render. There we go. Anyway, whatever, Pierce. Probably not knowing your pronunciation at the moment. Yeah, that looks about right. Pobjeda. I just was listening to Ukraine the Latest podcast yesterday, and they kind of butchered that name. I was like, oh, maybe I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. No, I think they butchered it. So there you go. That's the what's been going on there. A few, we pass Velika Novosilka, come all the way to the west towards Robotyne. We can see, according to Andrew Perpetua, some advances for the Russians, in fact, further than what Suriyat Maps has in that salient to the east of Robotyne itself. Again, worrying for the Ukrainians here. Having said that, as I've told you before, I'm not too concerned over the Ukrainians losing this area. It was an area they gained, so if they lose it, you're back to square one, really. The Russians do apparently want control over Orikhiv. That is going to be their target there. I am more concerned over activity around here, activity around Krasnohorivka, Novomikhailivka, Marinka, and Avdiivka itself. They're the ones that worry me more. And that's it. No other changes. I did forget to just share this with you. This is coming from up in the Cherny-Yampolivka area, which is here just to the west of Crimea, in the northeastern axis. Here we have some imagery to show some fairly significant Russian losses. So no reports just says destroyed, damaged and abandoned equipment near Terny Yampolivka. Osman from the 24th IDAR Battalion reports 2 for 6 vehicles there. Does this tell us anything? I mean, it tells us that the Russians lose a lot of equipment all the time, all over the shop. And we report that, or I report that on a daily basis with the general staff figures that the Ukrainians declare. And I think they are broadly going to be at least somewhat accurate. As I say every day, that's what the evidence suggests. But again, the Russians just can afford to lose this, or at least it seems that they can afford to lose it still at the moment. They are pushing forward. It's that mass of troops in these various areas attacking all at once, and the Ukrainians just being short of artillery ammunition. As Ukraine the Latest reported from the front line, they visited some artillery crews back from Avdiivka, and they asked one of the reporters asked one of the crew members, so what's going on? What's it like for artillery ammunition? And he just said, "We are effed." That was his answer. We're effed. Effed for ammunition. So what can you do? Like, if your main method of repelling Russian attacks is artillery, that's your number one way of repelling them. Yes, FPV drones are going to be super useful for vehicles, but if repelling those attacks on foot, you're going to need mortars and you're going to need artillery, and they are going to need to be littering the Russian positions with hot lead, right? That's what you're going to need. And if that's one thing you don't have is that, this is what happens. It is all about artillery ammunition. And you could say that there's a lack of preparation going back to well into last year. The counteroffensive took place. They used up all that ammunition. But I guess if you're thinking you're going to get consistent replacements to that, then that's what you do. You use it up. Okay, right, we've not got it coming in. Oh, and that's the whole next phase screwed. That one thing, that, forward planning. Okay, we need to stockpile just in case we're not going to. Yeah, it's fine. You get it. We're in this for as long as it takes. We will support you for as long as it takes. Okay, brilliant. We're using up all our ammunition. Right? Can we have some more ammunition because you guys have got loads? Yeah, we're in it for as long as it takes. However, can that be 2 years' time? Because right now we're having a few issues back in Congress. Avdiivka falls, Novomykhailivka, Pobjeda falls, Robotyne goes back, Krinky, yeah, probably not anymore. Bish bash bosh, and the Russians take lots of ground. Now, hopefully, this is just this moment in the war where the swing goes back to Russia before things get ramped up and there's a consistent, sustainable provision and procurement of all sorts of material for Ukraine, and then that goes back in favor of Ukraine. But I would say that's not only contingent upon artillery ammunition. Really, the only way Ukraine properly wins this war, and I've said this for a very long time, is just shed loads of distance munitions. It's about ATACMS, Storm Shadow. Really, Taurus would be lovely, thank you. Stuff 5 from F-16s, HIMARS, lots of HIMARS, GLSDB, JDAMs. Loads of that. You give Ukraine all of that stuff by the bucket load. I mean, thousands, preferably tens of thousands with some of those categories of that stuff. And Ukraine don't need to commit their soldiers. They can just flatten Russians or take out equipment and bases and air bases and strategic targets with all of those standoff munitions. That's what they need to do. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Take care. Speak soon. Oh, one more thing. I did a video for members about trolls, and I've made a whole suite of members, moderators, just normal, everyday moderators for channel comments. I haven't told them who they are. Just check out if you are a moderator, if you're one of my members. It was a bit kind of random. I was like, yeah, brilliant. And I probably have been a bit inconsistent. But a number of you are. All I ask is, because the Russian trolls are a real big problem, be judicious with it. Don't overdo it. We need dissent, as long as it's good faith dissent. We need people to disagree. I need people to disagree with me. Otherwise, it's all an echo chamber. But for those paid up Russian trolls who clearly just come in, do those hits and spread complete disinformation and just laughy emoji at whatever, that, sweep them away. You're not worth conversing with. But those who are showing that they're good faith interlocutors, there's no sense in banning dissenting opinions. Absolutely not. But if you are a weapon of the Kremlin, then you can jog on.